Hey guys, and welcome back to another one of my Marvel videos, and today we're going to be talking the new Spider-Man Far From Home trailer. Now, before I get started, if you haven't watched Avengers Endgame yet, then beware, there are going to be spoilers on this video, and there are spoilers as well to the movie on the Spider-Man Far From Home trailer. Alright guys, so the first scene is kind of an emotional scene. You know, Peter Parker is talking about how he's missing Tony Stark, how everywhere he looks, he finds him right in front of him. So obviously, Spider-Man Far From Home is going to start off at the very beginning, referencing Avengers Endgame, you know, giving us this emotional moment, so get ready with the tissues and whatnot, because obviously they're going to be talking a bunch about the death of Tony Stark, the death of Iron Man. Now the next thing over here is that Hogan actually highlights the idea of how much losing Spider-Man did take a toll on Tony, and how for him, bringing the kid back was all that matters. Now Hogan starts talking about, you know, the snap at the end of Endgame. Tony wouldn't have done that unless he knew that you're going to be alive, that you're going to be here after he goes. But the level of sadness, the level of tears at the beginning of this trailer does indicate that this movie is going to be happening right after the events of Endgame. So yeah, it's probably going to be like days after the events of Endgame, like just a few days, probably less than 1 week. I mean, yeah, it's still hot, the whole topic is still hot, it's still painful to talk about and to hear about. Now every single movie, or every single movie franchise to be precise, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe does have its own soundtrack. But the one that is being used at the very beginning of this trailer, when they're basically talking about Tony Stark, is the Avengers soundtrack. Now for one thing, I did love that touch on the trailer, and I do hope for sure that, you know, during the movie, when it comes to scenes in which they talk about Tony Stark, yeah, they use that soundtrack, gonna make it a lot more emotional. We've got bits and pieces on this trailer out of an action sequence that's probably gonna be part of the beginning part of the movie, like the first half of the movie, and that's to kind of emphasize the statement that he makes in the second half of the trailer, and probably the second half of the movie. You know, he's the friendly neighborhood superhero, and there's a certain kind of transformation that's gonna go down over here. However though, Nick Fury does set him straight, gonna get to that in a moment. But we've got the emotional part, we've started the funny part, we're still on the funny part of this trailer, well at least the majorly funny part, and we've got the call from Nick Fury. Nick Fury is calling Spider-Man, and Spider-Man doesn't want to answer. Now this little bit over here at the beginning of the trailer does indicate that Nick Fury's visit to Spider-Man or to Peter Parker during his vacation is pretty much going to have roots at the beginning of the movie. So he called him, he sent him to voicemail, so Fury basically had to hijack his vacation, as, you know, Peter Parker does refer to it. But there's also a change to Peter Parker that you do notice on this scene, like he's basically not the same old Peter Parker. You know, he's not the same kid fascinated by big names in the world of superheroes or people who support them, you know, like he was with Iron Man, like he was with Captain America and whatnot. Right now, he's not that fascinated, he just wants to go. He just wants to go on that vacation, he doesn't care, he doesn't want to take the call, and that's probably going to be also part of the beginning of the movie. So the impact of the loss of Tony Stark, I want to unwind, I want to go on vacation and kind of forget about all of it. But right behind Happy over here, we do see a poster. It's a wrestling poster, and the name on the poster reads Crusher Hogan. Now Crusher Hogan in the comics is a character that is pretty well tied with the Spider-Man character. Now in the comics, as soon as Spider-Man got his powers, he decided, you know, I need to cash in on these powers, use them to bring in money for me and my family. So what he did over there was jump into the wrestling ring, and he pretty much made a joke out of Crusher Hogan. He understood his moves, he understood his tricks, he defeated him, and he beat him. Now as a product of those events, Hogan did lose his reputation, a solid reputation as a wrestler, so he pretty much started suffering from that, and later on in the events of the comics, Spider-Man or Peter Parker did go back and kind of saved this guy's face. Kind of gave him some of the dignity that he sort of took away, you know, in order to allow this guy to move on with. But on the same poster, we do get another reference, that being Bonesaw McGraw. We do see the bone and the McGraw, and you could just make it out. Now, Bonesaw McGraw is basically the incarnation of Crusher Hogan on the 2002 Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie. Now, after this, there's a lot of talk about the vacation, you know, indicating we're going to see part of that is going to be fun. There's talk about MJ liking Peter Parker, and we know that from previous trailers, so not going to expand on that idea or that thought right now. Now next up, there is the scene that we did watch on the first trailer and the first international trailer, which is basically all about Nick Fury in the room, in the dark, sitting there waiting for Peter Parker and for Ned. He tranquilizes Ned, and the talk ends up being between him and Peter Parker. You're a hard man to contact, Spider-Man. But the seriousness, though, of Nick Fury on that scene is very Ultimate Spider-Man. You know, when Spider-Man meets Nick Fury for the very first time on the pages of the comics. Now, this is the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so we are going to be getting the biggest version of Mysterio right out of the source material, right out of the comics, that being Quentin Beck. So first of all, there is the introduction, this is Mr. Beck. Then we've got the he's from a parallel universe kind of statement, you know, he's from a different Earth, not ours, a different one. And of course we've got the explanation as well. The snap tore a hole in our dimension. Now the snap tearing a hole in this dimension kind of makes us wonder which of the two snaps tore a hole in the dimension, in our dimension. So is it the one at the end of Infinity War, and why did no one make a jump to our universe, you know, between the events at the beginning of Endgame and the events post the 5-year time jump? Now this could also explain the tremors, you know, under the water, the ones that Okoye was talking about during that briefing at the beginning of Avengers Endgame, you know, second 20 minutes of the movie. But there's also another possibility. They have changed timelines along the way during the events of Endgame, and at the end of the movie, Tony Stark did go for another snap. That's after, you know, changing timelines, creating different universes based on these different timelines, which we know from the explanation that we got on the movie, the explanation that we got from the Russo brothers are going to be timelines that do exist in parallel with the timeline of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the main timeline that is. You do need to remember as well that his snap was a little bit more complicated. It did snap away people from a different timeline, or individuals from a different timeline, that being the Thanos and his armies from a different timeline. Now the next scene on this trailer is one that we did watch on the very first trailer, but was a little bit shorter there, but nonetheless, it's Nick Fury and Maria Hill, and they're fighting what we thought back then was pretty debatable. Is this basically Magnum, as in part of the Elementals team-up, or does he happen to be Sandman? Now both, and as I mentioned on my first trailer breakdown, could be possibilities. I mean, they could do the Elementals, while at the same time replacing some of the characters from the comic book team-up with other characters from the comics. So, in this case, we would get Multi-Man, Hydro-Man, and Sandman instead of Hellfire, Hydron, and Magnum, respectively, out of the Elementals team-up. Now, I think it all depends on how they're going to portray Mysterio on this movie. So if he's going to be the major villain by the end of the movie, there's no real need, you know, to change anything out of the Elementals team-up. No need to bring bigger names into all of this when you're going to turn it into a struggle with another character, a completely different character. But circling back though to the talk about, you know, another Earth, not our Earth, you're saying there's a multiverse. One, I love how this is turning into the MCM instead of the MCU. So pretty much this is becoming the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse instead of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But there's also, too, the fact that this might explain what's going on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 6. Kind of addresses certain issues on the upcoming season. Gonna be talking about that on a separate video though. Number 3, there is the fact that this has been addressed not only on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. before, but it's been addressed on the movies as well. That was Ant-Man and the Wasp, the lecture given by Bill Foster, you know, about parallel realities and multiple timelines. Obviously, this is not new to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you know, throwing the seeds, planting the seeds, making sure that, you know, we start thinking about it way before they start using it. It's always really good though to notice these little details because they do give us confidence in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like these guys are planned, they're planned very well, and they are planned in advance, way in advance. But finally though, there is number 4, the introduction of a multiverse on none other than Spider-Man. Kinda hints at the possibility that the Spider-Verse is gonna become a big thing, and not just in the animated movies, but also in the live-action movies. But Peter Parker though, on this trailer, does want his vacation, and he does want it so badly. Like I said early on, as part of the unwinding process, there is also the issue of Michelle Jones. You know, he's a teenager, there's a hookup in the horizon, a new girlfriend, so what the hell, let the world burn, just get someone else to do it. So he poses the questions, why don't you get someone else to deal with this? You know, what about Thor? He's off-world. What about Captain Marvel? She's not available. Now, the Captain Marvel question could also be a nod to the comics, you know, Miss Marvel finding the elementals on the pages of the comics. Now, I love how his next excuse is, you know, he's a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. I cannot do this. That's what he's trying to say over there. And then Nick Fury puts a stop to it. Bitch, please, you've been to space. Now, that's of course the obvious reference to the events of Avengers Infinity War. Now, he does admit the young boy part, the teenager part. You know, I want to go back to the girl that I like and tell her that I like her. And then when he's about to tell her that he likes her, he's like, hey, MJ, I am. And she's like, you're Spider-Man. But there's also the moment that explains why Spider-Man is so fearful of facing off with a huge enemy, with a major enemy. Saving the universe might require sacrifice, and sometimes people die. That's basically the problem with Peter Parker over here. He's got a problem with the death of Tony. He's still trying to help, but in the capacity of a, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, but not in the capacity of a major superhero. He does not want to be reminded of that. Like I said, he wants to forget, he wants to unwind. That's what really matters the most out of this vacation. He's trying to forget all about what happened with Tony Stark during that final battle on Endgame. But there are 3 more things on this trailer, and then the rest is really fun and games. The first of these happens to be the world needs the next Iron Man. Now the movie is either putting Peter Parker in the position that he's basically taking over the legacy of Iron Man as Spider-Man, which I don't think is the case, by the way, so the next option happens to be that they're basically telling us another Iron Man is coming soon. Now how soon, we might not be sure if that were to be the case, but nonetheless, it's a possibility out there. But the second one, though, is all about the drawings of Iron Man in the classroom or at school, with Peter and the others. The third one is all about the scene with the Charles Bridge in Prague, and that basically looks like we've got all 4 elementals kind of mixed together, kind of unified together. With that being said, though, my work here is done, so let me know in the comments down below what you thought of the new Spider-Man Far From Home trailer. Let me know as well if you did spot any comic book Easter eggs on this trailer that I missed. Let me know as well if you did like this video by dropping it a much appreciated like, subscribing to this channel, and make sure you enable notifications in order to get updates when I post a video, publish a community post, or start a live stream. But until the next time that you tune in for another one of my videos, thank you so much for tuning into this one, and have a great day.